Welcome to the Echo Essentials podcast.
I'm Dave Dale.
And I'm Scott Clark. This is September 16th week. As we're getting into it, I want to mention that last week, Bay Today ran an article about the whole PFAS. And finally, I think it's the federal government that has set limits now, right?
Yes.
And according to the article in Bay Today, it's like we're over those limits. And this all goes back to some of the different interviews we've had about PFAS in our area and what's happening. What did you take from it when you read Stu's article?
Well, I actually I heard a little bit about it before that, and the new way they're looking at it does put North Bay in a spot, but they not until the province picks up on it.
Yeah, so the province has to now chime in on this, right? Because it's the province that looks after water quality, right?
Yeah. So they have to set a limit that North Bay has to follow. No. And when the province sets that limit, they have to help pay for it. So, it's going to be an interesting time. We actually covered the details and the potential and speculation about how this would go down in our stuff when we covered it. So this isn't really news. It's an update.
Yeah, and it's but it goes back to, Dave, when this all started a year ago, we talked about how can we have more fulsome conversations about things that are important. And back in your day, if I wanted a more fulsome look into an issue in North Bay, I would open up the newspaper, right? And then you'd have a long, half-page article on a story that took, some time to write and put together and research and all the things that are happening. It just doesn't happen today in, I don't want to say like Globe and Mail and Toronto Star, but I mean like in smaller communities like ours and even bigger than our community. So it's really awesome to see that, some of the things that you and I talked over a coffee about, that it's sort of playing out in real time and we're seeing it in real time.
Yeah, and that is a good sort of segue into our first anniversary and figuring out where we sit in the media landscape and how big a role we're going to be playing. And it looks good.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. And that's what this show is about. Today is about our anniversary. So happy anniversary, Dave.
Happy birthday, too.
Happy, Ben was employee 1. You were employee 2.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's and I'm still to be employed. We don't have the budget yet to be employed. So lots of volunteers, but lots has happened. What are you most proud of in the last year?
Well, I like the way we kept evolving and adding things to the network. Maybe not at the fast pace that we thought we would.
Yeah.
But we just kept at it, put the shoulder to the wheel and kept pushing. And, the newsletter has found its beat. We have a couple other shows. We launched our show, which was, I thought, a nice big element to add into it. Lisa's been doing great with her To North Bay with Love. And the volume and archive of these interviews are like gold, I think. And we should probably figure out a way to mine it better because it's there. And those conversations are, a lot of them are still valid, right? And still good to listen to. So the challenge to us is to take what we're doing and the mining from the community and present it and deliver it better. Just get more people involved.
Yeah. It's a little more complex than I initially thought. Like, you have a background in journalism, I don't, and we're not a news organization, but we still curate news and get into topics, and then there's lots of things to consider about those topics. So if you get into a podcast, let's say we had Dave Hansman in, and we talked about mining. Where do you start with that? There's so much to talk about, right? There's so much to discuss. So it's like, what do you discuss? What things do you pick up? And I'm sure you get tons of phone calls about do a story on this and do a story on that. And people want different things, but what are some of those big chunky meaty things within a community that we can be talking about and having fulsome discussion about them?
Yeah, and I think more important as we go forward is expanding on those networks of people that are already embracing what we do, and help get them to help us to expand a little further within their circles, so we get some more people to listen and appreciate local news.
Yeah. So, and do you think they'll ever address the window issue that I've had at City Hall and the multiple different colors of windows?
Well, from the start, I thought it was something that it should be looked at as a kaleidoscope benefit of being in the city, and promote the fact that we have diversity in window colors.
Diversity in window colors. That's right.
I think that's what we have to do, is just sort of embrace what's going on.
We have to embrace what's going on.
You can't swim against the tide all the time, Scott. I keep trying to tell you.
Yeah, fair.
Go with the flow.
It is what, and not that we've done lots of different podcasts, a number of different things, and it is interesting. One of the things that people are listening, and people who you don't think might be listening, or say, I'm too busy. I'm a really powerful person in the city, and I'm not listening. So they're listening.
Well, the best way to get people to listen is talk about them. So we're going to talk about more people more often.
Well, and I'm excited about the sports show that's coming up. Tell us a little bit about the sports show you guys got planned.
Well, Paul McLean, Source of Sports, and I are going to co-host a show to get it off the ground, and it's. I think we've created a bit of a structure that we can sustain. The first half is going to be high school. NDA athletics is one of the strongest parts about growing up in North Bay for a lot of people, high school sports. So we're going to focus in on that each season and try to cover off all the different sports somehow. Hopefully we have some students and some teachers and people, parents even, that capture some of the stuff that's going on, the action, and let us reproduce it and use it in the show. I was at the Friday Night Lights kickoff for the football season on Friday. It was packed at Omichel. Like from one end of the benches to the other. People are interested in high school sports.
That's great.
And it was a whole bunch of stuff going on. So we're also going to combine in that structure non-high school sports. And there's going to be a heritage moment where we dig up a little something from the Sports Hall of Fame. So we're going to try to do a multi-generational 30-minute sports show for every Friday morning.
Nice.
And I think we can do it.
All right. I'm excited to hear it, because that's been a year in the making, and it's I never understood
a year in the wishing.
And a year in the wishing.
Now it's in the making.
But also there's logistics. The part that I never understood is like, I talk, hey, could we do a sport? Yeah, we could do a sports show. But the logistics behind that is massive. When I say logistics, I'm talking about, how do you get a score from this game? How do you get an interview from this? Like, how do you make that all happen? So in years ago, you would have 3 or 4 people who would just cover sports, right? And so now it's like we have to do everything. So this is our anniversary. So we've invited Erin Trafford and Dave Trafford from the Story Studio Network to join us, and we can let's reminisce a little bit with them today.
And we'll talk podcasting.
Let's talk podcasting. But first, let's hear a word from our sponsors. I love when we get to do live reads of our sponsors, Dave. We're doing one for Voyageur Aviation, which were founded in 1968. And they're a proud member of our community, doing worldwide aviation services from their headquarters right here in North Bay. Have you seen the planes that are up there? There's like UN planes or planes from all over the world.
Yeah, it's like an international scene up there.
It is. And it's growing as well. So part of what we're talking about here today is about if you want to get into the aviation game. It's they have lots of different roles at Voyageur, and they're hiring right now. So everything from pilots to aircraft maintenance personnel, corporate administration, machinists, supply chain professionals, and many, many more. Be part of a workforce that's over 400 strong. That's got to be one of our larger employers in the area, right? They're supporting humanitarian, government defense, civil aviation operations right around the world. It's an incredible career, and it's happening right here. For your career in aviation and beyond, learn more about open positions and career pathways at voyav.com. And, blue skies ahead.
This weekend, make your way to Casey's Restaurant in North Bay for an unforgettable get-together. Dive into our delicious appetizers and enjoy the best drafts in town. It's the perfect spot to unwind, catch up with friends, and savor great flavors. Don't miss out on the fun. Join us at Casey's for a weekend filled with good food, great drinks, and even better company.
It's been a year, and we're going to go back in time a little bit here to our good friends, Erin Trafford and Dave Trafford, in different parts of Canada right now. Welcome to you both.
Hello, hello.
It's like coming home.
It is. It was, so it's our anniversary. It's been a year since the Echo Network first stood up, and we go back in time when I'm sure we've told the story many times about what if we did this? What if we created a local network of podcasters? And I was following Erin a long time on LinkedIn and loved all her posts and everything like that, and just reached out to her. And Erin, jumped on it right away and said, "Yeah, this could work. What if we did this?" And we just sort of leaned in and got started with the Echo Essentials podcast and the Echo Network and all the different things. So, what have we learned over the last year, team?
Well, I like that the whole thing started with the question, Scott, why does a podcast network not work?
That's true. That's what I asked.
Right? That was how it started. And it was like, there's something here. So if there's a problem with this, what could it possibly be? And it was a great way to come at this because, Erin and I always get, well, why does a podcast network work? Okay, well, there's a script for that one. There was no flipping the telescope around and asking the question the other way. Really kind of made us think in terms of, okay, yeah, let's drill down on the opportunities, the challenges at the same time. So for whatever we learned, I think we learned it because we started with your question and it was the right one to begin with.
I think I agree with that because as I think this through, and Scott, I'm sure you would agree, we have found many reasons why podcast networks don't work.
That's so true.
We thought we knew the answer to that question, and and I'm saying this tongue in cheek, but it's not been easy. Many of our assumptions have been proven false. A lot of new things have transpired in the general kind of zeitgeist podcast broadcast world since we started having conversations that have changed the way we think about Echo, the way we talk about Echo, what we want it to become. So absolutely, it's funny you should say that because I do think that was the exact right question that we needed to tackle. We needed to look at it through that, okay, wait a minute, where are the blocks that we don't see yet?
Mm-hmm. Three of us here. Dave, a little bit different. He was a journalist for a number of years, but we came from more of a broadcast side of things. And probably the biggest thing, and because I remember sitting down doing my first podcast, and Ben, our producer here, was saying, "Okay," I go, "That was excellent," and he's like, "It was okay. It wasn't a podcast though." So for broadcasters to get into podcasts, there's actually a huge learning curve. And I think that's probably why I think broadcasters are having a tough time because they don't know how to do a podcast. And I think that kind of irks, if there's any listening right now, that irks them because it would probably irk me too. But it's true.
It does irk you. I tell you that every time we meet, Scott, this isn't radio.
I know. This isn't radio.
It's not radio.
Why is it so hard, though? Why is it so hard? It seems like a natural transition from one to the other.
Well, I think, okay, so there's a distinction here. Is it a natural? Are we changing something about what we do? I think this is the problem, is that generally the big guys, big and or little guys, the radio companies, think that podcasting is just taking radio and putting it somewhere else. I would liken it to, I'm going to take off these running shoes and I'm going to put on my slippers, right? It's a change. what podcasting is actually doing is transforming the way audio is being received. It's a transformative function of audio. And that's what we're learning with Echo, is that the audience receives it differently than they receive radio. The advertisers interact with it differently than they'd interact with radio. The way the sale looks different than it does with radio. The way the content is produced, Ben would know this, totally different than radio, because you can produce things asynchronously. We do that to great extent at Story Studio Network. None of our shows happen in a linear fashion. I can say that almost exactly. So I think what we're bumping up against in the industry as a whole is that radio guys just want to change. They just want to change their t-shirt, when what we're actually asking them to do is fully transform the function of what they're doing. And that's where we're seeing the cream of the crop rise and the other ones just kind of wither. Was that too heady? It's Monday.
So Dave, I grew up in Dave Trafford. I grew up in Toronto, and my first foray into broadcasting was I used to listen to Wally Crowder every morning. That's what I think probably most of the city did in Toronto back in the day. Wally Crowder and Jocko Thomas from CFRB, from police headquarters. So you've been on CFRB, right, Dave?
A little bit, yeah.
And so when I listen to you, a couple of podcasts that I really enjoy, one's On the Ledge about Ontario legislature, and Now and Next, it feels like, when I listen to yours, it feels a little bit like this honest interaction, CFRB sort of conversations. But how is it different? Like going to what Erin was saying.
Yeah, I think it's at the heart of it. It's the relationship with your audience. So when I was doing, radio at CFRB in Toronto, I'd be on at 7 o'clock in the morning. And if you wanted to hear what Dave had to say, you had to tune in at 7 o'clock in the morning. Now you can kind of pick it and choose the time. So it's audio on demand is one thing. And I kind of live where you live, or I'm able to be where you want to be as an audience. That's one thing. But the other part of it is, especially now, when we look at the approach to content, the ideas that we're talking about, it's not just a headline, it's not clickbait. We're able to actually get into some deeper conversations. And I'm seeing, a lot of discussion around the length of a podcast. How long should the podcast be? And 5-8 years ago, ideally, you were in the 25 to 30 minute range. And why? Well, because people behaved in a certain way that by the time you got to minute 25, they had to drop the kids off at school, and they were no longer you had your undivided attention. All these years later, and it sounds like a lot, it's not that many, but in podcasting terms it is. So here we are 8-10 years later. And now they're starting to talk about shows that are an hour and a half long. To me, I think the mistake that the podcast producers are making, similar to the way the mistake that the radio guys are making, is that they're looking at it in terms of measurable time. That is to say, well, if I put out more people will listen. It's not it. It comes down to the heart of it, is that the relationship with your audience. So Erin will always tell you, they may show up for the content. It's a great interview, but they'll stay for the host. And if they stay for the host, if this week I'm 22 minutes and next week I'm 42 minutes, chances are I'm going to keep them for most of that. So we've really kind of drilled down on the difference between where we're talking about, and you guys will have seen this, the relationship with your audience is based on the amount of time they spend with you, not the number of individual listeners at a given time who are listening to you. And it's a nuanced difference, but dare I say, it's a new lexicon. We're having to develop a new language around this. And that's the challenge that radio has. That's the challenge that TV has. Quite frankly, that's the challenge that podcasters still have. We're still trying to develop the language that best describes this. We know that we've got a deep, rich relationship with them. And quite frankly, they want to hear about climate change. They want to hear about the challenges of parenting. They want to hear about the challenges of safety for your kids on the street. They want to hear about how you're coping with, cancer in your life. You're not going to hear that anymore on legacy media. They don't have the bandwidth. They don't have the attention span. So I think we're kind of in this transformational period where we are growing to understand better the behavioral needs of a given audience. I don't need 100,000 people. I've got 100 people who then become champions. Wow, this is really important stuff. That feedback, that relationship then changes it a lot for not just the thought leader who's doing the show, but the brands who are using it in their own media strategy. So it's pretty rich.
Dave Dale, we're a year into this, and before I asked the question of Erin Trafford, you and I sat down and had a coffee, and the big idea for us was, how can we do this like a local podcast that would pull people together when media is so, especially in markets this size and even bigger than this size that the media has exited. I would never have thought that there'd be a Toronto morning show in North Bay, being rebroadcast. I thought if there's one thing small markets can do way better than big markets is we could be local. We don't maybe not sound as good, but gosh, we could do local better than anybody. So in this year, in the evolution of what we've been doing, how has the journey been?
Well, I like the way we're learning how to package the shows. And when I say that, I mean, we're getting our Echo Essentials one with Scott and I down to a bit of a pattern that I like, where we have about a half-hour interview with somebody, but we, on both ends of it, we talk about that issue, maybe some other issues. So we get that hour sort of show, but half hour of an interview, which is a good, comfortable time, so people have a choice. So it picks up people that are interested, I think, in ourselves as hosts and talking about the different issues, how we look at them. And so I think over the course of the year, we're kind of learning what kind of works and what people are looking for. And I think we can probably evolve a little bit more with our banter, adding a little bit more newsy elements, maybe, like we're just about to launch, we're putting together a sportscast, right? And we've learned over the course of the year that it can't really, like, just one interview for a sports show just won't do it. Because there's just so much, and people want, they're thirsty for local stuff. So we're going to have like 5 minutes of a half-hour interview as part of the half-hour show, which gives us a chance to do a variety of things all at once and become regular contributors. So we're going to do the podcast interviews for the longer form conversations, because that works. It really works. It's very much like when I used to sit down at a kitchen table to do a feature interview with somebody, and that's why it seems so natural. And it's you're just talking, and you're getting to where you want to go, but you also have some personality, and you can take little tributaries off to the side, right? And I think it's a matter of learning how to package it so that it's accessible. That's what we're learning, I think, over the course of the year, that we didn't necessarily know what would work. Of course, I'm a big video guy, right, compared to the audio only. So we're branching into that area where we're, I think, picking up listeners, because there's different type of consumers out there for what we're doing. And I think that kind of works. I think you can play them back and forth. And of course, Cogeco is picking up our show now, and that's the half-hour interview part. So a lot of different people are seeing it. Whether that'll lead to more viewers and people visiting our website and newsletter subscribers, but it's like that thing that you sent me the other day. Becoming more for the listener is important, but it's how you package it.
I'm actually quite proud of, from the local side, some of the things that we've done, that the long form interview and even the curation of news with the newsletter has really evolved, and it's fantastic, but it's also, championed also some of the journalism that's happening within the community. So we're not news per se, and we're not a news organization, but we like to, hey, here's some stories that people are working on, because some of our biggest ones were like Stu Campaign, when he did some investigative reporting on the treatment center down on Lakeshore Drive, and people are going back, and it's it keeps growing, that podcast. and then the long form interview, like even on PFAS, right? And where it's like at the airport, the egg farmer, the head engineer from the city talking about, the complications. Like, you could never be able to do that in one show. You have to have many shows to have all the different people come together. I'm actually super proud of how that long form interview and it feels. I was at a function this weekend, and I was actually pleasantly shocked how many people came up to me that are listening to our podcasts and are engaged in the content that we're producing. Is that a surprise to the Traffords?
No, I don't think so. I mean, at this stage, as you guys are talking about this, one of the things that I've learned in the last little while, and when I do Now and Next, it's more of a sort of a general cultural news, whatever it might be, high level stuff that we're talking about, as opposed to the political one with On the Ledge. But I was reading it recently from some of the folks who are trying to look at this and say, okay, how do we do this properly? Do I have, and back to Dave's point, do I have 7 different segments in my show, and we're going to break it all up and it's going to look like a wheel, and we're going to have, at regular segments. And the thing that went on, the light that went on for me was treat your feed as if it's a magazine as opposed to your individual episode. So, for example, your feed may have, this week, we're talking at City Hall, but the next episode you do, whether it's 2 or 3 days from now or 2 weeks from now, doesn't matter. It's sports or it's a highlight. You begin to actually create the variety within the feed of the podcast. And again, this is new thinking. It's a new way of talking about it. It's new lexicon, new language. And it gets back at the heart of be where your audience is. They come for the content, they stay for the host. So if it occurs to them that, Scott and Dave are really interested, this really lit you up this week, you don't have to feel like you're serving everybody at the same time within your 45-minute show. I just thought it was really freeing in terms of, oh, okay, I can have a variety of ideas and maybe do it twice a week and not feel like I'm missing anything. I'm bringing them along and engaging them in this fun and games that I'm excited about. So it was a different way of kind of looking at that packaging that Dave's talking about too, right? So again, new language about the relationship.
Yeah, none of what you just said surprises me, and I also would like to just emphasize too. I mean, I was there the day that we flipped the switch on the Moose, which is now Jet, back then. And here's the difference. We went into North Bay to make a huge splash. We gave ourselves 6-8 weeks. We wanted to dominate, own the market, every radio tuned to our frequency. That was our plan, and we more or less succeeded. With Echo, here's the emphasis. It's a slow burn. The measures of success are different, but the measures of success are exactly what you just described, Scott, is you go out to a community event, you're standing in the coffee shop lineup at Twigs, and somebody engages you in something meaningful about something significant that you said that made an impact for them versus Erin Trafford on the Moose, I love you, bye, in their car, right? Driving down Main Street, because that's what it would be. It would be honk, honk, woo, the Moose. And then, right? So nothing wrong with that type of fandom, but that is not what happens with podcasts. It is a slower burn. It's Scott and Dave have been in my ear every week since January. I feel like I know them. They said some things that made me think. They said some things that made me mad. And when I run into him, I'm going to maybe be courageous enough to say it out loud. That is humongous. And I love it.
One of my favorite moments actually was it was about a month or two ago. I just went into the supermarket and go down this aisle. I'm doing a little bit of shopping, going down the aisle. And then this woman just throws her arms open. She goes, Scott Clark. And I went, hi. And she goes, I listen to your podcast. And you know what? I think I'm starting to like Dave Dale. And it was like lots of people all around, and she was just like, she put it out there. And so I'm like,
despite everything she's heard, she likes Dave Dale. Is that what you're saying?
And so,
but to be fair, Dave, I mean, like, you've been in North Bay forever, and there may be some people who had been reading your columns forever and a day who never heard your voice.
yeah, true.
Right? They only had read what you had written, and they had developed this picture of you in their minds based on their interaction with you on the page or on the screen. And then here you are now all of a sudden being vulnerable in a way that maybe you didn't appreciate at the time, putting yourself on video, putting yourself on a podcast. And of course, it doesn't surprise me. It makes people like you more because it's so much more intimate. It's weird that she hugged you in the potato chip aisle, Scott, but I mean, that's okay.
I think I could relate to that in a way, because I know a lot of people read me differently than I thought I was writing. They took me as a very serious guy that was very wanting to be, with a club. But mostly I was poking people and smiling when I was writing, but people couldn't figure it out. So
yeah. Well, one of the big changes over the last year is I got Dave to go to a hairstylist. And go
Sponsored?
to my hairstylist, and I don't have a lot. Well, it's sponsored by me.
Yeah, it's a perk. It's a perk.
It's sponsored by me. And then since he's been going to a hairstylist, he kind of first time, because he would just go to a barber, right? I go, Dave, he's got to, I'm trying to just manage this tiny little bit that's left up here.
I'm just going for the scalp massage. That's what it is.
So I go, you got a full head of hair. You got to manage that beauty. Look after that mane. And then, so I got him to go to Vita Salon and over on Ferguson. And when he came back, because they give you a head massage, and they're and he's like, oh, damn, that was good. It's way better than the barber.
Hi, I'm Natasha Laframboise, sales representative with the Laframboise team at Realty Executives Local Group Inc. Brokerage. We are a local real estate team here in North Bay. Our team of sales representatives, Matt Laframboise, Phil Seguin, and Adam Negro, are ready to help you through the buying and selling experience. We have been providing service to the North Bay and area community for over 17 years. Our goal is to provide knowledge, support, and guidance in order to prepare your home for sale, bring it to market using multiple selling strategies, and get it sold. As a home buyer, we have 2 buyer's agents ready to help you find your home sweet home. If you'd like to know more, check us out on our website, laframboiseteam.ca. We are always happy to help.
I think the going forward is how do we, as you're saying, some of the thematic approaches that we're taking, even the one we did on homelessness, right? We had an advocate for the homeless who was actually homeless that joined us on the show. We had a landlord that gets so much grief on his clients and his clientele. And then he came in to explain the challenges he has, right? We had the head of the District of Nipissing Social Services Administration Board in here. It's really interesting, the full conversation, because there isn't a black and white answer to any of these things that we're talking about. And you need the fulsome discussion to go, well, let's keep working towards a solution, because there's nothing black and white with these big issues. Yeah.
Can I jump in here with something that I would love to know? If you are listening to this right now, I'm going to issue a challenge. Is to reach out to Echo using the contact information in the show notes. I would love for you to send one sentence, half a sentence, it doesn't even matter. If you were to describe the Echo Podcast Network or just Echo Essentials as a flavor of ice cream, what would it be? Because there's no black and white when you go to the ice cream counter. There's an array and there's a range, and I would love for you to answer that question for us via email.
What flavor of ice cream? So a year from now, we're gonna meet up again and do this in a year. What do you think we're talking about in a year from now?
Well, I think we need to actually brand this as the Echoversary, by the way. Start there.
I like that. The Echoversary.
Yeah. But can I just say that in the past year, and I'll go back to your the comments you were making, Scott, about what the radio guys don't get. I had coffee with a radio exec this week, one of the big companies, and he gets it. He actually understands that podcasting for radio can't be recutting the morning show, just putting it up on the website. He said, that's just audio on demand. That's just a repeat that I'm going to run overnight. It's not a podcast. He understands that there are ways of doing what you guys are doing with, to North Bay with Love, to Echo Essentials, where you're touching the community where they live, and you're reflecting their values. You are reflecting their issues, their ideas, their fun. You talk about the homeless series. One of the things I subscribe to is on Facebook is the North Bay complaints page. And I learned there was a really interesting and an engaged thread on 2 stories I saw. One was about the lack of local news in North Bay and how starved they were for it. One, and they understood the issues. This isn't just, if I can use, they weren't calling Ben Sargent on this, or bullshit or whatever BS on this. They were saying that this is the issue that really faces our community. How am I going to know what to do in the next election? Because there's nobody here to talk about it in terms of local media. It doesn't go deeply enough. So that was one. The second one was, this is about a week ago, someone who had just moved to North Bay. Good job. And I don't know if it was a man or a woman. They posted anonymously. Said, I don't drink. I don't have a drug problem. I don't smoke. I don't have pets. And I can't find a place to live. And I've got a good job. So the housing issue in a community like North Bay, you guys are, I know it feels like you're scratching the surface on it. You will know this better than anybody. It's as important as it is in Vancouver and Toronto and Montreal and everywhere else. So there is the heart of what you're doing. It's not about the big city. It's about where you live, and it's about the community needs and expressing itself through a show like this, through Lisa's show, where we're seeing the community reflected. And I think back to what Erin was saying, they hear and they see you differently because they see themselves in what you are doing. And there's no way to put a price on that. I'll go back to my radio friend. And the question a year and a half ago at Radio Days in Toronto, big conference, would have been, well, how do you monetize a podcast? My question today, after we have seen what we have seen in radio, how do you monetize radio? I'm serious, and I'm not being facetious, the number of radio stations that have been shuttered, and we're not just talking about small town Alberta. We're talking about Ottawa. We're talking about a news station in Ottawa and 3 FMs. And we're talking about an AM station, a news talk station, a heritage station in Hamilton. We're talking about stations across the country that have been closed down because, and it's always, the financial pressures and the pressures of the market don't allow us to any longer make a business out of this. So where will we be a year from now? You are going to be filling much more of a void than you know.
Agree.
So I have a question because I have 3 journalists here with me, and I'm just going to choose my words as I ask this question. There's a large institution in our area that the head of that institution, I have got word that has been uncomfortable with some of the discussions we've had. And so I was scratching my head because we're not doing investigative journalism. We're having discussions, and we're not poking any bears. We're just discussing with experts and different things that are happening. And so in the question I'm asking is, because we're not doing any of the investigative journalism, or like truly, if I'm getting feedback like, hey, it feels like you're poking the bear a little bit and we haven't even done anything yet, does that excite journalists that we're doing the right thing? Does it what is it that you feel when you hear feedback like that? Because there's way more meat that we could be diving into and discussing that we've never even touched yet. what does it say to journalists?
I know a little bit who you're talking about and what you're talking about. And I think what we've done is just by showing the potential and talking about some of the issues and amplifying what investigative stuff the local journalists are doing, we've positioned ourselves to make them nervous because they see the potential. They see the potential, and that is exciting because our want and need to amplify local voices makes the establishment nervous because they were seeing the media landscape eroding and falling apart and becoming nothing. But I think we're bringing it back together locally.
I mean, immediately my reporter editor brain is like, reach out to them and invite them to come join the conversation. Because if you're striking a nerve and that's getting back to you, then like the only way, like shine light on that. And then you've put them at choice. Are they going to continue to be uncomfortable with what you guys are doing in full transparency, or are they not? And I mean, Dave's right. When you have a news vacuum, it only serves the people who don't want to participate in public discourse and dialogue. So as soon as you start to have open conversations, people who are generally squeamish about that are going to be squeamish about that. Right? You're just not accustomed to being aware of that.
No,
right?
Agreed.
That's what's happening here. It was like the funny thing is from my vantage point, I'm like, oh, everybody's uncomfortable now. This is great. Right? So
I just gave away prizes and told fart jokes. Like it's very different for me.
Right. But here, I want to give you a clear example from my market here in Halifax. I just did a podcast interview last week with two guys called Matt and Mike, and they have the Afternoon Pint podcast, and they take their gear to all of the breweries around Nova Scotia, and they interview the whoody who of Nova Scotia. And I was like tapped to be on this show, but I follow the premier. They got the premier to be on their show, having an IPA sitting there. And these guys are commercial insurance brokers.
Really?
They are not journalists.
Oh.
They are not reporters. I mean, if I looked at them through the lens of you must be the fourth estate, they wouldn't have checked hardly any boxes. But are they like infinitely listenable? Yes. Did they do a really great interview with the premier at eye level from two middle-aged guys who have families, who like to drink beer, who care about healthcare and roads and all the things? 100%. But they wouldn't go out there and say we're journalists. They'd say, "Hey, we're having the premier on our podcast, and we're going to ask him, if he was a flavor of beer, what beer would he be?" Right? So I think it's a matter of deciding, and I think we're still learning this. So back to the very beginning is like, where does Echo now fit in this news vacuum, given that over the last year it's gotten worse? So to that person, whoever that person is, or to that entity, or that body, or whatever it is, I expect an email. Come on the show. Mi casa, su casa.
Well, team, let's bring this to a close. We went a little over our time per se, but I just want to say it's been a great journey, right? And with any journey, there's bumps, there's turns, there's U-turns, there's there's all these things that all of us have been going through, just trying to find our way through this maze. But I'm really appreciative of the friendship of everybody here, like on the podcast, in the room. I'm really appreciative of the learning of this learning curve that we've been going through. It's been some good juice over the last years, and then sometimes I can't digest any more juice at certain times. But I just want to be. I'm just truly thankful. Like SSN, you're not making any money from this. Like. I'm not making any money from this. But we
learned that from radio.
Yeah, that's true. So, but it's this investment, all of us, this sweat equity we're all putting in to see where it goes next. And I just want to thank you all.
So I would just ask the debate question, are you better off today than you were a year ago? And I would say that in our situation, because of our Echo experience, and yes, there were bumps and turns and twists and shit we didn't see coming, we're way better off. So it cuts both ways here, Scott.
Agreed. Agreed.
We've done some good stuff here. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Erin Trafford, Dave Trafford from Storio Studio Network. Did I say storied? Story Studio Network?
You made it sound like a cookie for a second there, Storio.
Maybe.
Delicious.
That's a branding exercise. I love it.
There we go.
Thank you all, and thank you to our listeners and our viewers on this the Echo Essentials podcast. I'm Scott Clark.
And I'm Dave Dale.
Bye for now.
I'm Ben, podcast producer here at North Bay Echo, and the Echo Essentials newsletter is a great way to get all of the news and events that are happening in the North Bay area, and of course all the newest podcast episodes in one neat package. And it's very easy to sign up, and you can get subscribed in a few simple steps. So first, you're going to want to head on over to northbayecho.ca. While you're on the home page, you'll see some of the shows that we offer, but we want to keep scrolling down to this panel right here, and you can see there is a box to type in an email address for the Echo Essentials newsletter. So all you have to do is type in your email, make sure to check the box below. And what this will allow us to do is to send you the newsletter to your email. And of course, your info, as always, is protected by your privacy policy. Hit sign me up and you are good to go. You are officially a subscriber of the Echo Essentials newsletter. If you do want to check out our past newsletters as well, you can hit the past newsletter option to go right there, or you can just hit the newsletter tab at the top of the page. And now you can see all of the past newsletters that have been published. And there you have it. Super easy and simple. And now every Tuesday and Thursday, you will get Echo Essentials right to your inbox.